How are you guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'll be going through the pairs that I'll be watching out for the first half of this coming week. So the first pair that I'll be going through is New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. We can see that on the daily time frame it had impulsed up and it is forming some sort of a bigger correction right here, and the market had impulse down. If we go down to the 4 hour time frame, it's it moved out of this bigger structure correctively, and this to me is a sign that the market might be going up to these areas here. If it were to go down, it would have maybe impulse down of the structure and move back up to test the structure correctively before impulsing back down again. But it moved out of the structure correctively, forming another smaller structure. If we go down to the 1 hour time frame, we can see that it moved out of that bigger structure correctively. Again, it impulsed out of this smaller structure, and it went in back to the structure. There was an entry here last week which it didn't take. It was on the 15 minutes time frame. After this small impulse, the market formed this smaller correction. I didn't take this trade because I was not on my trading desk. I ended up taking this trade right here at around 3 3 p.m. in the evening East African time. And by the time the market was closing, I had already moved my stop loss to break even. So next week, this is one of the pairs that I'll be watching. I'll be waiting for the market to form a convincing correction like this one right here before I enter again. If the market opens and it decides to continue back up, well and good, I'll lock in some profits. If it decides to come back down, it will take me out at break even. So we'll move to the next pair which I'll be watching out next week. We'll look at the US dollar index, DXY. If you go to the daily time frame, you can see that DXY had impulse down, and right now it's inside this bigger structure, which to me looks like a continuation structure. I'll be I'll be expecting the market to form a bigger correction. To me, looks like the market right here wants to form a bigger correction before continuing to go back up to around these areas here. After it get to these areas here, we will look at the structures that it will be forming. If it impulse up and it comes back down correctively to test these areas, which will be signaling US dollar strength. We'll be looking to buy the US dollar. If it will get to these areas up here in form of a reversal structure, we'll be looking to sell the US dollars in the weeks to come. So the next pair that we'll be looking at is gold against the US dollar. On the daily time frame on gold, we can see that it's inside this bigger structure which had already been touched the first time up here, the second time, and on the third time it impulsed down. If we go down to the 4 hour time frame, we can see that the market got up to those highs there and it impulsed down, and right now here it's forming a continuation structure which might lead the market to going back down, to continue going down. So the next pair that we look at is Great Britain pound against the US dollar. If you go to the daily time frame, we can see that there was a double top area up here which the market approached correctively. It impulsed a little and then it started trickling down in form of a correction. And right here it's forming a bigger structure which to me looks like a continuation to continue going down. So next week I'll be waiting to see how the market will approach these areas. If it approaches this area right here correctively, I might take a risk entry trade. But if it doesn't approach risk that area, correctively, I'll wait for the market to impulse down on the 1 hour or 15-minute time frame, and then I will enter on the break of the first correction continuation structure. And then we go to the next pair, which is Australian dollar against the US dollar. We go to the daily time frame. You can see that the market reversed from this area up here. It impulsed down, formed a smaller correction, it impulsed down again, and then to me right here, it's forming some sort of a bigger continuation structure, which is a correction. If we go to the 4 hour time frame, I'm expecting the market next week to form some correction before going up to form a structure. It forms it if it gets up here to these areas correctively, I might enter with a risk entry. If it doesn't get to those areas correctively, I'll wait for an impulse down and a correction, and then I'll enter the trade on the break of that continuation structure, the correction. So we go to the next pair, which is US dollar against Japanese yen. If we go to the daily time frame, you see that it impulsed down, and as it was coming down to this area, it was forming smaller corrections, impulse, smaller correction, impulse, smaller correction. Right now I have an area which I have marked up here. I'm hoping that the market will go back to those areas. You can see that it's forming some sort of a correction, bigger correction, and then inside that bigger correction it's forming some sort of a reversal structure. So next week I'll be waiting to see how the market will approach these areas up here. If it approaches these areas up here correctively, I might enter with a risk entry. If it approaches this area up here impulsively, I'll wait for the market to impulse down and then form a continuation structure, and then I'll enter on the break of that continuation structure. Go to the next pair, which is Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. The daily time frame, you can see that the market reversed from up in form of a rising wedge. It impulsed down and it formed smaller correction as it was coming down. Right from last week, last 2 weeks, I was watching out for this pair. I was expecting for the market to reverse back down from these areas, but it didn't give me any signal. Right now, you can see that the market is still trickling up, and it's forming something, a structure which looks like a rising wedge. So next week, this is one of the pairs that I'll be watching. If the market approaches these areas, get to these areas correctively, I'll enter with a risk entry. If it gets to these areas impulsively, I'll wait for the impulse down, and I'll enter on the break of the first correction. So we go to the next pair. The next pair is Australian dollar against Japanese yen. You can see it was moving down correctively, and now it's again going up correctively, forming some sort of a structure which had been touched the first time, second time, and the market is approaching the structure for the third touch. So I'll wait next week for this. The structure is not that convincing, so I'll just wait for the market to get up to those areas, impulse down, and give me a correction. I'll enter after the first impulse, and on the break of the first correction, that's when I'll enter. So the next pair that I'll be watching out next week is Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. We can see that it had impulse down on the daily time frame. It went back up correctively. It moved back down again, and right now it's going back. I'm waiting for the market to come back to this area where it will have formed this continuation structure, which to me looks like a bigger flag which had been touched the first time, second time, and I'm waiting for the market to come back here for the that touch. If the market gets up there correctively in form of a reversal structure, I'll enter with a risk entry. If it gets there impulsively, I'll wait for the impulse down and the formation of a continuation structure, and then I'll enter on the break of the first continuation structure. And the next pair right here is Euro against the GBP. Great Britain pound. You can see on the daily time frame, it's forming some sort of a structure which looks like an expanding triangle, and I have double bottoms right here which I've marked. The market has already got to that area impulsively, so I'll wait for the market to reach down here to this trend line. If it gets there correctively on the 1 hour time frame, I might enter a trade with a risk entry. If it gets continue coming down here impulsively, I'll wait for a impulse back up and formation of a bigger continuation structure, and then I'll enter on the break of that bigger continuation structure. I'm hoping for it to form a bigger expanding triangle, and then that's when I'll enter, guys. That has been our video for this weekend. I'll make another video on Wednesday or Thursday. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like these videos and share. Thank you. See you on Wednesday or Thursday.